Welcome to the How to Raise Money podcast for anyone who wants to raise other people's money for a business or property venture. Right now, there has never been more money on the planet, and there has never been more opportunity. This podcast will help you put the two together. So, if you need money for your business or property proposals from banks, lenders, angels, whales, or dragons, this is the podcast for you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the How to Raise Money podcast. I am Ray McLennan.
And it's with me, Nigel T. Best. Raimondo, how are you?
Yes, Nigel, the sun is shining. It's warm outside. The heating is off. Thank goodness.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the first time in a long time.
Yeah. It's all good, isn't it? When the sun comes out and a bit of warmth, you can feel it going through your bones. Obviously,
and it's been raining and the grass is growing and the plants are growing.
I mean, it only took about half an hour before I was sort of thinking to myself, "Oh, it's a bit hot. Could do with it getting a bit cooler again." So, never satisfied. Never satisfied. Yeah. But no, all good. We've Ray, we've got an interesting episode today. It's a mindset one, and this was brought to us by Jay Woolway. Jay, big shout out to you. Jay has joined our private Facebook group. You can join it too. It's in the show notes as to how you can join. But Jay was asking a question. I think it's a really good one, Ray, because it's one of those subjects that people feel, but they daren't talk about. It's one of those things, when you go to somewhere and the person says there are no stupid questions, and then you open your mouth and he says, apart from that one, and you always are worried that you're going to be kind of called out as being a bit of an idiot, or that's a really stupid thing to say or do or ask or be thinking. But these are often the things that hold people back. And Jay's suggested a great one. And I'm sure there's a few people out there who are probably thinking the same thing, Ray, that it's this, we put it under the heading of using other people's money. And do you have the right mindset? So we're going to do a little bit about what other people's money is and using it, but this one's about the mindset, because Ray, it is a nervous time. If you're asking anyone to lend you money, there's an element of nervousness about it, isn't there?
Well, of course, it's because you don't want to be rejected and you want to make sure you're getting it right, and you think you've only got one shot at it, which of course is not the case. You don't have one shot at it. There's a lot of money out there. And it depends who you ask. It depends how you ask, and not everyone's going to be, open in the way others are. What you say to one person is going to be different to what you say to another. Usually, it all comes down to, like everything, human psychology. And people who have money are looking to invest it. And one thing about investors and people that have money is they don't have money all the time. So they may say, I have money to invest. And then by the time you get around to asking them, they've already invested it. So the no is not, it's not a personal no, it's a concept no. And that's the difference. I think the using other people's money and the mindset about it all comes down to one thing. What stops anybody from doing anything is fear. That's it. Fear of what? Well, fear of what are the ones that we primarily think of. We're not good enough, or we won't be liked. That's the two sort of main fears. And being good enough really just comes down to how you present your request, and about being liked. Well, there's nothing you can do about that. Some people will like you, some won't. You can't take it personal. You can't curl up and give up just because someone says no to you. I mean, let's face it, we are men of a certain age, and when we were younger, we got no all the time. Every time you asked the girl out, you got no. So you kind of get used to it.
Yeah, and that's
eventually one said yes.
Hey, I tell you what, Ray, though, you obviously stuck at it far more than me, because for me, I took those no's, very badly, and that made me not want to ask the question again. And that came down to a lot of things. If you got told off, or something, it stuck with me, and that, I'd say, that really held me back. So listen, if you're in that position, and we're not talking about asking someone out on a date or anything like that. We're not in that game, not today.
Not
but
what this podcast is about.
no, it's not. That's your underground podcast, isn't it? On the dark web, Ray. That's one of yours.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
But no, it's one that, you talk about human psychology, and what we've done is we've listed a few things out, and that number one thing we've got there is fear. And lots of people have, that have made it into an acronym: false expectations appearing real, everything and run. All those sort of things. It's one of those things that is probably linked to the, amygdala part of the brain, the original reptile brain, which was, can I eat it? Is it going to eat me? And those sort of things, are fight or flight, those sort of things. And you can't underestimate how you're going to struggle to overcome a couple of million years worth of evolution just by, putting your fingers to your thumbs and going and everything being hunky-dory. You've got to practice these things, Ray, haven't you? You've got to be aware of them, and you've got to realize step by step. But I'm just going to, Ray, just very quickly, I think there's three things here, and there's possibly more within the fear. And the first bit is kind of fear of asking for money. So it doesn't matter who it is, where it is, what it is, just the fear of asking, full stop, as you say, maybe rejection. Fear of asking for enough. So sometimes, you might need 120, but you think the person might only lend you 100, so you only ask for 70. And before you've done anything, you've negotiated your way down to not having enough to do the project. Bizarre, but that's what, because people don't want to offend. And then a fear of asking for more if you hit problems, snags along the way. So there's just a few things in there. Ray, have you got any other types of fear that I know you've got a comprehensive list there?
No, I think you've struck them on the nail on the head there. Yeah, asking in the first place can be challenging for some people, and then asking for enough. But I mean, getting over the asking is just doing it. It just has to be done. You just have to ask. You just have to put it out there and say who you are and what you do, and here's the project, or here's the business, or here's the property, or whatever it happens to be, and just put it out there. As for enough, well, it should be the financial appraisal that determines if what you need enough. You're actually better to ask for too much than not enough, because you can ask for some, and then if you don't get enough, you've got to go back, and that's worse. Going back. And then the challenges that can come are if there's challenges with the project, or challenges with planning or something like that. There's all these things. But I think in the mind of in most of our minds, we have primal needs. So that's an investor as well as you. And the primal needs are, certainty. We're always looking for certainty. Variety. We're always looking for variety. Significance. We're looking for that. And love. That's the sort of four primal needs: certainty, variety, significance, and love. And certainty is being, we talk about it in the CREST model, and credibility, and being sure, and having certainty in your project because you've done a financial appraisal and you know what it is that you require. So that's one of the big ones. Is to get that boxed off. And that can only be done by doing a financial appraisal, being boring about it almost. So the amount you ask for is not determined by what you think or what you want. You've got to put up a compelling case, and that's it. So you overcome the fear, or fear can be overcome by action, but directed action in the right way. And if you do a proper financial appraisal and you get it checked by someone, so there's been checks and balances, someone else has looked at it, someone else has questioned your figures, and that's happening with us. We're looking at a project right now that's in the many millions, and we had a Zoom call on Thursday, and as we speak, it's being looked at right now. It's being pulled apart before going forward. So, and that's to be rejoiced. Yes, I want that, because you learn from that. If you've missed something out, if you've done something wrong. I mean, for example, we were talking on Thursday there, and steel prices are 40% up from the first time the appraisal was done. But there are some buffers in there. There's amounts unforeseen, and some other amounts, where we put in more in anticipation of commodity rises. So what we want to find out now is where we right. Where we right, and we'll find that out this week.
Yeah, I mean, Ray, that comment there when you said this is a great way to learn is when somebody sort of responds to your initial inquiry. I think that's what you got to do. They say feedback is the breakfast of champions, and it is. And when someone's giving you feedback, do not defend it. Do not sort of argue. Don't sort of do that. Just say, if anything, I'd say thank you. And if you wanted to go further, I would always say, that's interesting. Tell me why you are thinking like that. And try and unpick the thought process of what's going on, because Ray, we've spoken about this a number of times. You want to kind of sometimes reverse engineer something. So pick the outcome you want and then kind of try and reverse engineer all the stages along the way that get you to that outcome. And this is where the investor might be more experienced than you, and they may well have a definite roadmap that they want to follow. And if you can sort of ask the question, that's interesting. Tell me why you're thinking that, and how does that fit with what you want to know, and see if you can make notes on that. But going back right to the beginning, Ray, one of the best ways of overcoming this, and we've said it so many times, such an old adage, but it still works, and it's ask for advice and you sometimes get the money. Ask for money and you'll get the advice. So if you do not want to ask for money initially, ask for the advice. Just say, look, I really value you, your knowledge, your experience, and your sort of take on this. I'd love some feedback. Here's some things. Could you give me some advice? This is the project, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Ray, what often happens when you do that?
Well, they say, it looks like a good return. Where are you planning to go for the money?
There you go.
And I was hoping you might be able to tell me. I'm planning to go to this group or that bank or that lender or this friend or this family member or this pension fund or whoever it happens to be. So it's good to be.
It's such a gentle.
Armed.
Yeah, forewarned is forearmed. Yeah, and it's such a gentle way to get into the conversation. Sometimes people don't like to jump straight in saying, I need £112,374, 28 pence by tomorrow. Open up your checkbook. I'll take it right now. That's a difficult one to have, especially with someone that you met walking down the high street. But ask for advice. I've heard another one, Ray. When we've been talking about your elevator pitch.
Yeah.
In the days before, you had to be 2 meters away from people and you had to muffle your voice with a mask. One of the best ones was to tap someone in front of you in the queue for the coffee. Just say, look, you don't know me, but if I said this and you give your pitch, would you understand what it is that I do? And would you be interested in having a conversation with me? And I know people go, that's crazy. Why would you do that? And this is find a stranger. And if you can't explain yourself in your pitch in that 30 seconds, then your pitch isn't good enough. And so when you're talking about this, all you're doing is you're asking for advice. You're not actually pitching them for business. You're asking for advice on what that pitch was like. And this is the same. Ask for advice about the thing that you're thinking of doing. Don't go straight in for the money. So fear, folks, the only, as you say, Ray, the only way to get past it is to take action, isn't it?
Just to do it. That's it. Don't talk about it. To do it. You learn what's right by doing it wrong first, or by speaking to someone else who did it wrong first, and then you can learn what works and what doesn't work. I've seen over 6,500 pitches, including some stinkers that absolute stinkers, but also some brilliant ones. And we have taken the best of the best, and that's what we use. I want to say the best, the ones that get the money, the ones that get funding. the one we used last time, it's literally 1 minute 12 seconds. The pitch is 1 minute 12 seconds, and it's a distillation of what works, and it's worked so far 100%. So far, everyone who's watched it or listened to it has wanted to invest in it. So,
and you can't beat, right? You cannot beat an irresistible offer. And but I'm curious, right? You said there were some stinkers, some that you literally probably laughed in their face. However, I'm sure you gave them feedback on that. Were these people that were, some people you can see they're just never going to take the feedback, never going to take it. But other people who sort of go, wow, I didn't realize I'd got it that badly wrong, point out where it's gone right, you know, or how to make it right. You know, I'm sure you gave that so that, you know, you leave people in a better position.
Absolutely. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of feedback. I mean, the feedback that's given a lot of the time can come across as a presentation, that how they put it forward. I mean, I remember one guy just sweated very heavily, you know, which just because he was nervous, he sweated very heavily, and he had a business partner, and I just simply said, look, you should do the presentation, not the other guy, because, you know, sweating implies that you're, you know, nervous or you're being dishonest almost. When I asked some of the investors that he pitched in front of, that's what they said. They said, yeah, it doesn't come across well. Now, it might be, you know, it was perfectly innocent. He was in a room, there were hot lights, but it was almost like, I don't know if you remember the Harry Enfield sketch when he's pitching in front of Dragon's Den. He's doing a pitch, he's got a blue shirt on, and he's got a sort of wet, damp ring under his armpit. And every time the camera goes back to him, the ring is bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, he's just drenched in sweat. That was a bit like that. So that was one, just needed just a change of personnel. There was another one I recall, which was a guy who had not used to work for a construction company that did huge projects, you know, in the tens, hundreds of millions, big construction projects. And he decided he wanted to go on his own, get into property and do a small commercial conversion. And he needed £1 million. That's what he needed. But he came across as so condescending that, you know, oh yeah, I've done projects worth 100 million and 50 million, and now I'm going to do this one, and, you know, it's no big deal sort of thing. But just the way it came across was completely wrong, because what he failed to understand is when he does big projects like that, he's one part of a big team, and the money is already there. The 100 million is already, someone else has arranged that. He was a small part, a small cog, you know, in a big setting, a very small fish in a big pond. And now he wanted to be the big fish in the pond and apply for money himself. I mean, he was destroyed by the questions because he didn't have a team. He hadn't, a lot of the things he took for granted with the bigger firm, he hadn't built into the business plan. And it was an absolute car crash. Now, just remember that one. So those are two sort of presentations that just went wrong.
But
and then the others.
I was going to say, but from that, Ray, that feedback there, it's either going to work. Because what I mean by that is, you know, overcome your fear, because once you've been asked those difficult, awkward questions a couple of times, you're ready for them.
Yeah.
And if you imagine you're opening the door to go down into the cellar, you know, and the light doesn't work. The first time you're going to be very nervous because you've watched the horror movies where the weirdo with the axe is going to come at you. The second time you go down there, you realize the light switch is at the bottom of the stairs, and you turn it on, and you realize it's empty. So the third time you go down, not even thinking about it. And that's all you're trying to do with this, you know, have a go, take action, ask for advice, and stuff. You know, it's, you just got to practice. You're never any good at anything until you practice.
That's it. And you learn right by doing wrong, or someone else does. And you just need to get that valuable feedback. That's absolutely what you need.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
I've got another one down here. So one of the mindsets that some people have is it kind of comes down. This is kind of just before we get into the CREST model, but there's one that I always think is you do get people who are optimists and pessimists, glass half full, never mind the glass half empty, or whatever. The glass is completely empty. In fact, the glass is broken. I dropped it. It's a disaster. And I've cut my feet on the broken glass. You know, some people are hugely negative. And when you look at the risk of the project succeeding or failing, you get some people who are overly optimistic that everything is going to go right. You get some people who kind of pitch it in the middle where, you know, this is the expected return. This is the expected outcome. This is the expected progression of things. And then you get others who are just like, well, you could lend me the money, but you know, it's probably going to go wrong. I think the building may well fall down, wash away in a storm and all the rest of it. And I really, you know, the chance of you getting your money back are, you know, there's two hopes, Bob Hope and no hope. And sadly, Bob's dead. And that sort of conversation, you go, what the hell? And some people are, they're convinced that they're not the right they've talked themselves out of it. And it's strange, isn't it, how we get this overly optimistic field of roses, everything's going to be beautiful, or everything's going to be doom and gloom, and somehow whichever you are, you got to bring yourself back into the middle ground a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that comes under the heading of what if, you know, what ifs. And that's where, you know, we talk about CREST model and we talk about credibility, which is usually a team of people. So in any endeavor, whether it's a property proposal or a business, you ideally want to have a team. You don't want a lone wolf. Lone wolves very rarely get backing. It's the team that gets the backing. And it's good to have in the team someone who's optimistic and someone who's pessimistic, because they balance each other out. But it comes under all the what ifs. So, you know, what if we don't get planning permission? What if, I don't know, what if commodity prices go up by 40%? What if, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all of that. I mean, what's being balanced off by the one that we're doing is the GDV was based upon historic sales figures, you know, from 2 years ago, and the prices have literally shot up in that particular area. So the 40% rise in steel is going to be clearly offset by a rise in value, and that's happened. You know, if we talked about this 20 years ago or 30 years ago, to be the same thing. I mean, a big what if from 20 years ago, 30 years ago was interest rates. What if interest rates shoot up? You know, what if inflation kicks in? There's all these sort of things, but you can talk about it till the cows come home, but you've just got to get on with it. You know, so there's never, I think, you can look back and think, well, that was a perfect time. That was a perfect time. But the people then in the moment didn't think it was a perfect time. It's like right now, a lot of people think it's a perfect time and a lot of other people think it's not a perfect time. You just have to make a decision and go with it, but you just have to do it, you know. You've got to get on with it and do it, and then you'll find out. You know, as long as you've got the financial appraisal and the parameters covered off, you know, there's nearly always there's always an exit. There's always a way out. There's always things that will come in and from left field. That's just life. That it's about talking about mindset. It's about your ability to handle that sort of thing, you and or your team. And if you've looked at all the what ifs and you've got your financial appraisal, then you know you can move swiftly. We've looked at projects where we were about to do one thing, and when it came to construction, we've decided we had to do something completely different because the one we were looking at didn't work. I'm thinking about, you know, do you do stuff as HMOs? Do you do it as buy-to-lets? Do you rent? Do you sell? Many years ago, I was buying property to do serviced accommodation. Changed all the rules. So we didn't think that would happen, but how did we pivot? Well, we simply turned them into HMOs, and then we decided to go for serviced accommodation in a different way. Instead of having separate units, we would buy one whole unit and do it. So it always happens. It always happens. It's just, you've got to get on with it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. I think the theme, folks, if you're listening to this, is you got to get on with it. You got to give it a go, take action. That's the clear thing. And some of the things, Ray, that you're sort of coming back to, folks, have a look in the show notes, because if you go to the website, you can download what we've, you know, fairly modestly titled The Perfect Template. for putting something together like this, where you are asking for investors to a deal. Have a look through that. Make sure you've ticked off all the boxes in there as to all the aspects of the project that people may well ask you questions. And if you can do that, then you're going to be in a much better position. But Ray, it wouldn't be an episode of the How to Raise Money podcast without me talking about toothpaste. Sorry, about the Crest model. And you know, a lot of people, when they're thinking of borrowing other people's money or using other people's money, they may well be aware of the Crest model and what we talk about here, but they think, I've got holes in this Crest model. I've got gaps, you know, I've got problems here. They're going to spot it and all the rest of it. What would you say to people who think they've got bits missing in the Crest model?
Well, bring it up. Ask, like you say, ask for advice. You know, we've had in Q&A sessions, we've had investors throwing questions to people, and as I always say to them, if you don't know the answer, say you don't know, and ask for advice. Say, well, what do you think I should do? So, for example, we had a lender who said, we are only going to lend if we can get shares on the board and become directors in the company until such time as we get paid back, and then we'll reverse out. So, you know, they hadn't considered it, the borrowers hadn't considered it, but it wasn't an issue, it wasn't a problem. So, for example, when you set up an SPV with one person. Don't issue any shares, but let that one person get the bank account opened. That gets the admin done and out the way. And then later on, and by the way, if you set up shares, use 10,000 shares of a penny rather than 100 shares of a pound. It's much easier to divide. So silly little things like that, when you've got that set up, then when somebody wants to come in, lenders, which invariably some will, no, not all of them, some, you know, we've done one there with Aldermore, and they were just quite happy to, you know, it was just a term loan. They didn't want any part of the company or anything like that. But we've got another one now, and they're looking at a seat on the board, a directorship, and a shareholding that they will hold on to until such time as they get their money back. Again, that's fine, absolutely fine. That's how they want to do it. Then that's part of the security part, isn't it? They want the security. They want to see management accounts on a monthly basis, which is absolutely fine. You know, it's whatever makes that person happy. Remember the human needs of certainty. And for some people, in terms of risk, some people have a lower risk threshold and others have a higher risk threshold. And that's why you need a team of people to balance these things out, to bring in the things that you don't think about. So,
yeah, it is. And one of the ones that I know some people say is, I don't have the credibility. I haven't done it before. And we've spoken about this before, Ray, in terms of, okay, we'll leverage someone else,
yeah, indeed,
team that you are creating to give that credibility and say, okay, I haven't done it, but I'm working with X, Y, and Z, and this is their portfolio of projects that they've done in the past. So there are ways, folks. If you think you've got holes in the Crest model and that you know, it won't work for you, there are ways to think of it in a, you know, and come at it from a different angle, so you can plug those holes and still be able to present a, you know, a Crest credible application for using other people's money. So there are ways to do it, folks. Do not give up that early. Please, you know, keep going, keep going. I know, Ray, so that might have been number 3, Crest. One of the biggest fears that people have using other people's money. So sometimes if you used your own money and it all went pop and everything went wrong, well, you've only got yourself to blame and it's only you that's been affected, etc., etc. But when it's other people's money, I know a lot of people heard a phrase probably when they're kids, depending on the age you are, neither a lender nor borrower be, and you know, you shouldn't be in debt. You shouldn't borrow money you haven't got, and all those sort of things, all those old adages doing it, because people always say, well, what happens if you can't pay it back on time with the interest and all those things? So a lot of people have that fear. Ray, how would you kind of help someone who's thinking, you know, I'm so nervous about paying it back?
Yeah, again, go back to the financial appraisal, go back to the timelines, go back to the security that's been on offer. and just check those, make sure that those are correct. But will things go wrong? Yes. Do we have investors who get caught up in deals that have dragged on? Yes, of course. But all investors know this. It's a fact of life. You cannot be an investor without having one or two challenges, let's say. And mostly they come from stock market, that sort of thing. They put money into stocks and shares or things like that, and they tend not to work. In property proposals, there's nearly always an exit. There's always a way out. And again, we have had over the years some where people have put money in. The project hasn't worked out for whatever reason, usually overruns on some part of the build. I remember one and it was all groundwork. And then I remember another one and the lawyers had basically screwed up all the title deeds and got caught in a quagmire of legals for a long, long time. So what happened there is investors simply negotiated. They would say, okay, well, I put 50,000 into this. I'm supposed to get whatever, 65,000 back out. It's not going to happen. Am I going to get my money back or a price in the pound, something like that? We've not had anyone, touch wood, who's put money in and got nothing. They've nearly always either got their money back with a bit on top, not quite as much interest as they hoped. And in one occasion, only one occasion I can think of, and that was where the investor decided to take a lower amount, just to get out quick, to get out, early. He waived his rights to everything just to get some money back and out. And then I think it was 75 pence in the pound or something. And the project eventually went on over a period of time to give everyone their money back plus a little bit extra. So had he stayed in, he would have got it back, but it was his decision. He saw an amount, decided to take it, and that was it. So it's all about negotiation. Most lenders, that's why you want to lend from an angel, from a lender, from a bank, rather than friends and family. You want sophisticated investors, high net worth individuals, because they understand the risks of the game. And with high net worth individuals, sophisticated investors, you're generally not going to get phone calls every day. With friends, family, or smaller investors, they've got a small amount of money to invest, and then they tend to want to know what's happening to it all the time, which is fine. We do encourage people to do a follow-up Friday, which is just to say how things are going. Not everyone does it, but we constantly push that to happen. And then there are other investors that just say, no, I don't want to see you for a year, just leave it. Let's see how we get on. Because they have a balanced portfolio.
I mean, that's it, Ray. It's one of these things that, that's to work out between the parties involved, and decide that before anything goes ahead. How often do you want this information? And number 5, I've got down here is communication, but a slightly different angle to it. But they're paying it back on time. Folks, if you have gone through the template, if you've done the financial assessment, if you've taken account of contingencies, potential variables, variances, difficulties that might be incurred, time, the time scale extending or whatever, these are all factored in. So you should only be at the point of asking for other people's money when you have as much information as you can reasonably be expected to have at the point you're asking for it that demonstrates that this should repay on these particular terms. That's the expected return. And I know a lot of people say, okay, property, if you get a bad property, a property deal that doesn't go how you want, it's a bit, someone once said, it's a bit like a bad haircut. Now, I'm not the greatest person to talk about haircuts, because if you're watching this on the Facebook group or anything, or on YouTube, you'll see I don't have a great deal of hair. It's all slipped around the sides. But, people say it's like a bad haircut. It will grow out. And if you can negotiate enough time, property, if you have a look and you say, oh, property doesn't always go up. Well, if you could go back 100 years, I think you could probably buy London for, what one building would cost now. So property does keep ticking up. Yes, there might be a dip where it drops down a bit, but then it keeps coming back. So it's a bit like a bad haircut. You might have dyed it the wrong color. You might have cut it too short or whatever, but it's going to grow back out. So you should have done the homework there, folks, before you start asking for other people's money. That should give you comfort and the investor comfort that this is going to pay back with the interest on the time, you know, in the time scale that you're proposing and all the rest of it. But Ray, number 5, carrying on for the communication thing. One of the things that I always think is amusing is, and hey, I've done it myself, you know, doing JVs, other people's money and things, is you're so excited about the front end and getting the money and getting started that you don't talk about how this is going to end, what the end point is, how the separation, how the divorce, how the settlement is going to happen. And you don't lay out the terms of it, what happens in these situations and things. So if you are nervous about, well, I don't want to be on the hook to this person forever and a day, you know, define the end point, say what it looks like, and say what triggers it and who can trigger it and all the rest of it. So it's funny, Ray, isn't it? Some people are so excited at the front end, they forget to negotiate or think about the termination of everything.
Yeah, no, indeed. Well, I mean, we talk about, again, in the CREST model, credibility, return, exit, security, and trust. And exit is in there. That's the end point. What is the exit? It has to be clearly defined. And then what ifs, you know, so the exit is by sale of the property. What if it doesn't sell? Or what if there are additional costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it is by negotiation, communication. There's nearly always a way out of it. If it starts to go legal, it's just the lawyers end up getting money. You know, I mean, I was a lawyer for a while, and I ended up in a lot of situations where partners had fallen out with each other, directors had fallen out with each other, and all it needed sometimes was someone just to say, "Look, I'm really sorry." You know, if they just never apologized, they made the mess, they never apologized, or the other side thought it was deliberate or something like that, and it never usually is. It's very, very, very rare. But I think it was once in hundreds that we came across something that was actually malicious. You know, that was orchestrated as a fraud, as it were. The rest of it was usually just a big misunderstanding of how things didn't work out. You know, planning permission was applied, or it was the wrong type of permission, or the architect's plans were out. You know, we've had ones where architects have submitted plans and they've been, you know, 6 inches out, and the council want the whole building to be demolished for the 6 inches. You know, which is just crazy. There's no point in going to law over that. That's a negotiated settlement. You know, there's nearly always a way to negotiate these things, but you do hear of, you know, you hear these stories of councils demanding a building is demolished, but usually you'll find that the end building bore no resemblance to the plans, you know, that sort of thing. It's not that it was 6 inches out, it was that there was, you know, 16 feet out, or there were too many, you know, an additional floor was added on or something like this. That is very, very rare. It's very rare those kind of things happen. But yeah, it's just about what ifs, trying to look at the what ifs. And then insurance, that's what insurance is for. There's legal expenses insurance, and there's liability and various other insurances that are available. And we always build them into a financial appraisal.
Yeah, excellent stuff. All right, Ray, final few things. So if we do a bit of a rapid fire, one of the questions here, using other people's money, is when should you look for other people's money? Is it before you've got a deal or after you've got a deal?
Well, I think always find the money first. This is the chicken and egg. You know, do I get a deal and then get the money, or do I get, no, find the money first. Find people who have money, find out what they're looking for. What is it they want? What are they interested in? And then get them something. Start small as well. If you've got an investor and you've got some property, I mean, I know someone, a woman actually, who started off looking for, I wouldn't call it a JV partner, but looking for an investor, basically to buy the furniture for each property she was doing. She wanted to stage them, she wanted to rent them out, so she needed between £3,000 and £5,000 for furniture, something like that. And that builds up a relationship, because obviously that's a relatively simple amount to pay back. So the rental income from the property can start paying that back. And once that's cleared off, and it's done 2 or 3 times, then, you know, it's usually you'll find it's the lender who says, well, you're borrowing the money from the bank, why don't I give you the money at 5%, 6%, or whatever it is that the bank are charging you. because they built up that level of rapport and track record. So that's always a good way of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And some people might say, well, how do I talk to people about money? If I haven't got a property to talk about or a business venture to talk about. And I guess what you're saying there, Ray, is talk to people and find out what they're interested in. Because there's no point, sometimes I've seen people at, property meetings in the past where people would come up and they would be hammering a deal, saying, oh, it's this property and I'm going to convert it to this and stuff. So I'm needing 100 grand and stuff. And they didn't give the person time to breathe. And finally, after about 10 minutes of them ramming this story down this poor person's throat, the person turns around and said, yeah, that's all good and well, but what I'd suggest is you go talk to someone who's interested in that sort of property. I do commercial factories. And at which point the person went, oh, and sometimes we're so eager to put our side of this offer in front of people, we forget what you just said there, Ray, which is go and talk to someone as if you're having a coffee with them and ask them what they are looking for. Because yes, they may well have money, but if they're not interested in investing in the type of project that you're thinking of doing, they're the wrong person. At that point, the follow-up question should be, I appreciate this isn't your particular cup of tea. You don't know anyone who would be interested in this style of thing, do you? And that's often a great way of getting a lead into someone else to have a conversation to find that out. But
happened to me yesterday. That happened to me yesterday.
There you go. But Ray, just before that, all I'm thinking is, if you've had this conversation, that person says, well, actually, I invest in factories, or I invest in commercials, or I invest in light industrial units, stick that in your back pocket, because sure as hex or eggs, you will have a conversation with someone saying, hey, Nigel, you don't know anyone that's, wants to invest in light industrial units, at which point you can go, you're not going to believe it. I just had a conversation with a guy yesterday. I'll get in touch with them and I'll see if I can do an introduction for you. It's amazing. Find out what people want. It might not be, valuable to you right now, but it could be valuable to you in the future or to somebody else. So this is how networking works, folks. But Ray, what was your example yesterday then?
And I was talking to somebody. I talked about a short video that we'd made, and I did the voiceover, and she said, "Oh, can I see it?" So it's only a minute long, but she watched it and she went, "This would be fantastic for name of a friend. Can I send it to him?" I said, "Of course you can, yeah." So literally like that.
Yeah. So remember that, folks. So there you go. That's when should you look for other people's money? So have those conversations. The other one, Ray, that a lot of people say is, yeah, okay, I get the idea of other people's money, but where do I look for these people that have the money? And there's lots of places, but I know you've got a few listed there, haven't you, Ray?
Yeah, I mean, lots of places. I think these days, online has to be key. It has to be key. Put what it is that you do online, put it onto LinkedIn, put Facebook posts out there, pinned tweets or whatever it happens to be, Instagram, pictures of what it is that you're doing. Not looking for money, but just simply saying, this is a project I'm involved in, and this is what we're looking at, that sort of thing. Definitely put it out there on as much social media as you can. That's a good place to put it. And people will follow you and see what it is that you're doing. Then there are property meetings, obviously. There are specific investor groups that you can go to, you can get invited to. There are places where you can pitch. There are enterprise agency competitions. There are hubs for startups, all that kind of carry on. Go to all of them, speak to as many people as you possibly can. It's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil. If someone's looking at your project and they see it everywhere, then more likely. Clubhouse is another one. You can talk about it on Clubhouse, get some great feedback. You can go into, there are pitching rooms in Clubhouse where you can pitch. Pitch Me Anything in 2 minutes is run by a guy called Manny Fernandez. You can go in there and literally pitch. Now there will be hundreds of people in the room, and you have to put your hand up, and you have to have your biography filled out. So it's good to have your biography filled out with whatever it is that you're going to be talking about. So they'll look at your profile and see you and then invite you to speak. And then literally they will say, okay, you have 2 minutes. What's your story? And then you launch into it. And then about pitching, there's all sorts of things. We use the CREST model, but you obviously need to say what is the problem you're solving, who's your team behind it, what return are you offering, what's the exit, that sort of thing. There's a process for doing that, but yeah, put it out on social media, put it out there, go to events, speak to people. Like you say, speak to the person in front of you. You don't have to necessarily. God, I've got a cat climbing all over me here. You don't have to necessarily go to pitching clubs and things. Sometimes you'll meet people at petrol station. I was driving up on the motorway. I pulled into a service station. There was a guy in a Ferrari, older guy in a Ferrari sitting there. And I walked over to him and I said, fantastic car. What is it that you do to earn a car like this? I'm in construction, he said. I got chatting away with him and we exchanged details. Now he's in the northeast of England, but his profile was quite incredible. And that was just because he was sitting in a Ferrari. And I went over and asked him, fantastic car. What did you do to deserve this? And he was chatty enough. And there were people taking pictures and nobody coming over to talk to him, but it was a lovely car and it was a sunny day and the roof was down. So it was easy just to walk over and say hello.
I mean, yeah, right. That's a really interesting thing. I think that's one of the things. So you haven't gone over there and asked for money from the guy in the Ferrari, because that would be fairly crass and crude and all the rest of it. But you've gone over and kicked off a conversation, and that conversation could lead to something down the line whereby you invest in him or he invests in you or something like that. You just never know. But in this country, and I'm talking about the UK, I know we've got listeners all around the world, and hello to you. Thank you for listening. But here in the UK, the British Reserve is not to go and ask someone, something like that. But the weird thing is, when you do and you're polite, and you're not doing it in a threatening or jealous or condescending way, but you're doing it as a genuine, I'm interested and things like that. It's amazing how generous people can be with their time and explanations. Mm-hmm. And take those opportunities. I've done it. I've tried to teach my kids, if they see someone like that and you're kind of, wow, I said, go ask them. Go ask them. I said, I'm fascinated. What is it that you do? And if they tell you, you could say, and how, if I wanted to do that, how do I go about doing that? And they'll often give you a breakdown as to how they got involved in it, and what you had to do to get in a position to be, getting something like that. And the other interesting thing is, when people say, oh, you don't want to buy a Ferrari because it's a problem and it's a waste of money and it depreciates and all the rest of it. I wonder if you had something like that and you went out there and somebody like you, Ray, walks over and you strike up a deal, the deal itself, as a result of you having something like that and kickstarting a conversation, could well earn more money than the car has actually cost. And in essence, that car has then been an advert. Mm-hmm. It's been a bit of marketing, hasn't it? It's been a marketing thing. And, I know some people they just kick off with the wrong attitude, don't they, Ray? When they're talking about that, the attitude is Premier League footballer, drug dealer, those sort of things, because they don't believe anyone can genuinely do something of value for society and get a reward like that. So we've got the wrong mindset. So talking about mindset, we've got the wrong mindset. The mindset should be to go over and ask. And obviously, if they say they're a drug dealer, thank them kindly and make a swift exit. But if it's a Premier League footballer, they get the same question time and time and time again. But I've played golf with a few guys who've been footballers, and my question was, the football. There was always a kind of bit of chat about that, but my question was always, what do you do with your money? Because your career is going to be short, And I remember playing golf. It's a number of years ago. There was a lad called David Weatherall who played for Leeds. And I remember playing with him, and he was already buying houses. He said, look, my career could end tomorrow. He said it could end today on the golf course. He said I could just roll my ankle in a hidden hole or something, an undulation, and that could be me out, and it could be done. I said, what am I going to do with my time and my money? And I was thinking, wow, that's pretty cool. And some are really switched on. And one of the things that you've got to do is get out there and ask them, but ask them a different question. Premier League footballers, that's great, but you can't spend it all on flash cars and stuff. So where are you going to do it when your career's finished? And they're probably, for some, they may never have even thought of that situation. But then they might go, well, what do you do? So, well, I do property. Oh, do you? And who knows? You may have a celebrity investor in your sort of property or business empire.
You might do.
I'm sure it happens. I'm sure it happens. But there we go. So that's where do I look for other people's money? So petrol stations and people driving Ferraris is our number one tip there. Well, excellent. But finally, Ray, to wrap this one up, when it comes to mindset, we kicked off talking about rejection and fears and all the rest of it. So I'm just going to sum it up. This is something that you hear people talk about quite often, but I think it's so true. And people always go, well, what if they say no? And turn it around and say, hey, what if they say yes? That's the attitude that you've got to have, isn't it, Ray? Don't think about the rejection. Think about the excitement of actually when they say yes and you go ahead with it.
Indeed. And on that bombshell.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Ray, excellent stuff. So thank you, Jay. Great idea to revisit that one and go into that about the mindset. I think it's really powerful. Excellent stuff. Folks, if you want anything, go to the website, www.htrmoney.com.
.co.uk.
It's one or the other, honestly. My mindset was not switched onto the website, but go there. It'll be in the show notes. Have a look. We've got some resources, some interesting stuff. Join the Facebook group. We're a small tribe at the moment, but we're going to keep growing. And yeah, you see some of the outtakes sometimes of these podcasts in there. And you might even see Ray's got an amazing thing right here on the Zoom that we're doing. Ray's got one of those virtual backgrounds, which has some bookshelves. But if he moves his head just ever so slightly, you know how the background, it there, just move it, just tip your head to one side. There, can you see the face? And there's the real face of one of his kids in a picture appears out of his left ear. It looks quite weird. And he's also had the cat wandering across, but it's like a magic cat because the Zoom thing makes the cat disappear and then the head just appear. It's like a Cheshire cat that just grins at you. So there we go. Have a look at the show notes and get in there, get in the group, say hello. Love to hear from you. And do what Jay did and suggest a topic for us to revisit. So, Jay, hope that one helps for you. And Ray, are you going to sign us off?
I have been Ray McLennan.
I'm still Nigel T. Best. Excellent stuff. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the How to Raise Money podcast. It's made for people who want to raise money as debt or investment equity for their business or property proposal or empire. See you next time, where we can show you how to raise money. There is abundance. There is money enough for everyone on the planet. The question is, who has yours?